Okay, we clearly don't have a great signal here. Internet's coming in strong. Maybe it'll be better later tonight. Who knows? The 18 millionth crash. If I can set to ultra low latency, is it like better or worse? I don't even know where the last one crashed.
Abortion is
apparently I just need to have this open to check if it crashes.
Again, you say, as you point out, there is no law that limits access to abortion in Canada, but part of the reaction here in Canada to even the draft decision of Roe v. Wade is a discussion in some quarters about potentially implementing a law, but in this case one that would ensure that women have access to abortion. Are you concerned that in fact this situation in the United States might set back the purposes of your organization here in Canada?
We're very concerned, knowing who our Prime Minister is, Justin Trudeau. Ever since he became leader of the Liberal Party, he has made it very clear that his priority is abortion, both promoting it here in Canada and overseas. So we're definitely aware of that possibility. In fact, we already have a petition in opposition to any attempt, whether it's legislative or otherwise, to enshrine abortion as a right here in Canada. I think we at least appreciate that there's a recognition there that abortion is not a right currently in Canada. Abortion is commonly referred to as a right by Justin Trudeau, but our own precedent, the Morgan-Haller decision, did not, in fact, declare abortion a right. So in that sense, I guess that's the silver lining. But again, we are aware of that possibility, and we will fight very vigorously against any attempts to declare the killing of an innocent human being a right, because it absolutely is not.
Now, you, as you say, you are very much at cross purposes with the Prime Minister. We know that he has support from the NDP when it comes to his broader political agenda. I wonder, when your organization looks at where it might be able to achieve its means, where do you see that movement happening? Is it on the federal level? Like, where would you roll back abortion access?
So we do work at all levels of government, municipal, provincial, and federal. There is a Conservative Party of Canada leadership race right now. We are supporting pro-lifer Leslyn Lewis. So I think that's our immediate hope, is that she knows what she's doing. Party, and then eventually Prime Minister down the road, so we can have a pro-life Prime Minister. Of course, we'll also need to elect pro-life MPs if we're ultimately going to see a ban on abortion. So, I mean, certainly it's going to be a long road there, even if we prefer it be shorter. But also, I think recognizing that this shouldn't be a political issue. So we hope for a day when all pro-life MPs come from different parties, including the NDP, including the Liberals. That used to be the case in the past. It's rather unfortunate that only one mainstream party is open to participation from pro-lifers currently. So we hope that will change.
I don't think any of them are open to. I think it's just like, please don't show up to our rallies anymore, man. Can't do this any longer.
Next. Not only in the United States, but here. Where do things go from here, as there is this push and pull over this issue?
Yeah,
it dropped to zero again.
State level battles in the United States. It'll be interesting to see
just scared.
What Biden
I don't know why this is happening.
Considering that midterms are coming up. Again, I think that there isn't an appetite for abortion on demand, as the Democrats are.
True.
I think that actually makes them out of line with a lot of where Americans stand. The Democratic Party, I think, has moved further and further left on that issue, and most Americans do not support the idea of abortion in all circumstances, which is the party's current position. So we'll have to see. Again, I think that local grassroots efforts are going to be very effective, and I think we'll also start to see abortion advocates much more reinvigorated in terms of fighting politically.
Time to go and get the Swestinies. What's it called? The Godstinies. Get those prepared. Wait, oh my god, it crashed again. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Oh wait, no, I didn't. Okay. When she says this, I would bet so much what she actually means is that they support, like, if someone gets raped, you're allowed to have an abortion, or if someone's gonna die, you're allowed to have an abortion. Like, I guarantee. No, I don't think any like mainstream party supports the idea that you can, was like 7 months into it. I don't think that's a thing, unless it's like dangerous. Maybe it is. I don't know. I feel like this doesn't happen very often. I don't think you'll see a lot of support for that. Error. Is there like a way for me to like set my bitrate? Settings. Output. Video bitrate. It wants 750, doesn't it? No data coming in now. Okay, this is a bit of a messy one. Yeah, but that's like probably what she's talking about. I don't know. It's just
Justin Trudeau, in an attempt to virtue signal, will respond, even though
oh
it's
my
American
god, the
decision
virtue
to want
signal.
to differentiate Canada from the United States. But again, we're really looking forward to those conversations that regular people are going to have with their friends and family members, and we hope that this will hopefully encourage more politicians to put forward pro-life policies that not only will protect lives, but that most Canadians are in agreement with.
The greatest crime on earth.
Thank you for your time.
The virtue signal.
Thank you very much for your time.
The U.S. Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade hands back power to each state legislature to permit or ban abortions. At least 3, Kentucky, Louisiana, and South Dakota, have trigger laws that come into effect immediately. Others have waiting periods or require certification from state officials. Access could be limited in an additional 11 states where it is currently permitted if those states decide to increase restrictions. According to pro-life advocates, a small percentage of Canadians seek abortion services south of the border. How would today's decision impact them? Frédéric Chabot speaks for
who really does
Sexual
that?
Health and Rights, previously known as the Planned Parenthood.
I don't know. Probably some people do.
We certainly want to talk about the Canadian repercussions in a moment, but first I want to ask you, Frédéric Chabot, about the historic significance of what happened in the United States today. What do you think that is?
The ripple effects of this decision will be immense. This is a really big day, and we were, expecting that it was going to happen. We had seen a leaked draft of the decision in early May, but it was still shocking this morning to read the exact wording of the decision and to take in what the consequences will be for decades to come.
As I said, I do want to talk about what this means for Canadians, and I know your organization has noted that there are a number of Canadian women who go to the United States to access abortion later in their pregnancy. So what do you expect the decision on Roe v. Wade to mean?
Really? Do they?
This will effectively end the access to abortion in the U.S. for Canadian women because, of course, there's going to be some states that effectively ban abortion immediately starting today. So there were trigger laws that were in place as soon as Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned, and we're ready to be put in place to ban abortion in
the only state on the border of Canada that would even be in this discussion is like Idaho, right? Like, hold on, let me just U.S. state abortion bans map. Like, let's look at this. Expect a full ban to start within a month. Expect to remain legal unknown. Okay. Okay. I feel like these places are good as well. I feel like Michigan is like we're chill, okay? The Michigantonians, we're good with them. We're besties. They've sorted their stuff out. Michigan, not worried about them. So I guess like okay, then we go like map. Wait, and then we just go like Google Maps. Like, what state is this? Uh-oh. Don't get doxxed, trollface. Okay, well. Oopsie. Montana. Yes, like Montana, North Dakota. So, like, are there people in Saskatchewan? Are there people in, like, Espen that, like, drive down to Minute to get their... Is that a thing that happens? Am I crazy? And like in Idaho, is there like a lot of? Is there a lot of Alberta folk? No, not even Alberta folk. Is there a lot of like BC folk that live in like the mountains? Because this is like people don't even live here. This whole area is like nobody lives. Nobody lives here, basically. Like I bet if we went, hold on, can you do like the? Show me this. Yes, this one. Like if we zoomed in, I don't think anyone. Like, do people live here? Oh, okay. Hold on now. Some signs of life. A lot of farms. Yeah, a city anywhere in here? It's like city-ish. Yeah, like I don't know. I feel like this isn't a real thing. But I mean, I don't know. The experts saying it is. I'm just a schizo poster. At the end of the day. Now it says excellent. Hold on. It says it's excellent now. What if? Oh, don't do it. Oh, don't do it. Oh, don't do it. That's what, like, I get, like, oh my god. Crazy good quality. Oh, don't do it. Overwatch. Surely nothing can go wrong. Clueless. Absolutely clueless. I haven't been doing my job. I need to do my job more. Let's just go into like training. Spike. Also, what happened here? Oh wait, so dumb. Are we better now? Yeah. What if I'm like? Oh, look at that latency. Oh, can I get up here? Okay. Can you usually fly up here? Okay, I was a bit. Yeah, like it's a bit. It's certainly a bit sus. You could say those are kind of, just a little bit late. It's still not good. I feel like it's not gonna happen. You know what? Why not? What's the worst that can happen? Clueless. What is the worst that can happen? Surely nothing can go wrong. Oh wait, hold on.
of the states in the United States. Some states will still have abortion clinics and be in care to their populations, but there's going to be an influx of people from states where abortions will be banned that will go to these haven states. And so at time and wait times will increase, and it will just not be sustainable for people in Canada to try to access those
services. That's what she's saying.
Specific numbers, but to get
probably closer to in the hundreds.
Okay. I also
yeah, it sounds about right. Okay.
The other side of the border. What do you think about the prospect that American women
this is probably the scarier part.
Is that likely?
We don't have much information just yet about that kind of flow that will come from the U.S. to Canada. This is something that we will monitor at clinics that are closer to states where people will need to travel. We think an educated guess is that many people from the U.S. will travel to U.S. states, but if there's a closer Canadian city where they can access services, it is possible that they may cross the border to access either medical abortion or surgical abortion at clinics or hospitals.
Let's talk about
okay, wait, this will be the true test.
I should note that your group recently received about $2 million from the federal government to try to address this issue, but broadly, how are we doing in terms of access to abortion in Canada?
There are big discrepancies in terms of accessibility for people in Canada. So there's different numbers of services in different provinces. There's different restrictions that are in place in some provinces. For example, New Brunswick.
Wait, the latency is actually like non-existent. What?
Only 2 to 3
How many people are in here?
Province, and elsewhere people have to pay out of pocket. A lot of people in Canada end up having to travel for their appointment, and this is the funding that Action Canada received. It's to continue to build our abortion access fund, as well as the program where we offer for Canadians online where they can call if they have questions in terms of accessing sexual and reproductive health services.
The federal government says it is committed to ensuring equitable access. We know the election promise to put regulations in place to ensure that access. How would you say the federal government is doing on that?
Okay.
The federal government has made many
efforts to increase
access to abortion over the last years. Either,
just
they
gonna play Echo.
Have communicated their desire to work on this issue. They have made a historic announcement in federal budgets in terms of access to sexual and reproductive health services across Canada. There is more that needs to be done. There's also a lot of work that must be done by provinces and territories because health is a provincial jurisdiction. And so this is in partnership with the federal government. Province and territories need to work together to ensure equitable access to everyone on their territories. As the Canada Health Act that oversees insured health services.
Wait, yeah, this is like perfect latency. Am I like, is this over?
As the Canada Health Act, and one of them is accessibility. And when we have provinces where half of the points of service are like in Quebec, provinces where there's 1 or 2 in major urban centers, we're not talking about equitable access.
It's like 30 latency.
It sounds to me like you're saying that your message to the federal government would be to do more?
To continue working on this issue. So one thing that we must point out, so there's been talks and pressure put on the federal government to introduce legislation to ensuring the right to abortion in Canada. This is not a position that we support. We have everything we need at the moment. What we need is political will and continued support to enforce the Canada Health Act. In Canada, abortion is healthcare, as it should be. And so it is not regulated by a civil law, or we do not need to reopen the charter.
Okay, what's it called?
Was a right in Canada.
My frames might not be great.
Too many unintended consequences that could come from introducing legislation where restrictions can be imposed either now compromising with different groups that want to be part of the conversation about a law, or by later governments that could actually, instead of preventing what is happening in the United States, would accelerate it. And so in Canada, we have a model that is regarded highly all over the world. We are regulating abortion as a healthcare.
It's kind of interesting. They don't want to.
You talked at the beginning about ripple effects in the United States of this decision, but what do you think ultimately the ripple effects are likely to be on the conversation around this issue in Canada, around the political conversation?
Right. Well, the ripple effects everywhere when there are restrictions that are imposed on human rights and abortion rights can go on for decades. So there is a study that was done in the United States called the Turnaway Study that looks at the consequences that people experience when they do not receive the abortion that they want and need. And it goes on for generations because we're talking about impacts on families, we're talking about impacts on the children of those people who were denied an abortion. We're talking about poor economic status, about people staying in situations of domestic violence, people who are in situations of poverty years later because of not having had access to services that they needed to plan their family.
No, why this Roadhog? Bro, could tell this Roadhog to leave, man.
As a global community, when we see retrogression on human rights like this, this is something that we should all be concerned about. We need to continue to fight for the upholding of our human rights.
Oh, it rallied.
Of course, a conversation that is also relevant in Canada. We have a government right now who has pledged to do more to increase accessibility of abortion care. This is a conversation that needs to continue because there's still a lot of work to be done to enforce the Canada Health Act better, to ensure that every provinces is doing what they need to be doing to ensure access to reproductive care services. Because if we have a right to something that is just not accessible, it means nothing.
We're going to leave the discussion there for today. Thank you for your perspective.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Right now, as the Conservative leadership race is happening, candidates are shopping for anti-abortion votes.
Let's bring in the power panel. The Globe and Mail's Kelly Kleiderman is in Calgary. In Winnipeg, Egon Sinclair is a columnist for the Winnipeg Professor at the University of Manitoba. The DeWalt Marie Vastel is in Gatineau, Quebec, and in Ottawa, managing editor of...
Wait, is it going to end?
Marie, I'm going to start with you in that comment we heard from Minister Jolie. She's taken a swing at Conservative leadership candidates there. I believe, though, yes, we have a statement from contender Pierre which he released.
Okay, I'm throwing.
A Poilievre government will not introduce or pass any laws restricting abortion. We know, Marie, that 5 out of the 6 Conservative candidates said said that they are pro-choice. It's only Leslyn Lewis who has said that she would like to curtail access to abortion, and she has laid out a plan where she says she's being very clear about her agenda in terms of what she would like to do, things like limits on sex-selective abortion. So was Minister Jolie's statement fair?
I think the Liberals in general and Minister Jolie are probably overstating the imminent risk to abortion rights in Canada posed by Conservatives, but I don't think she's entirely wrong. We've seen that Leslyn Lewis, one of the candidates, sort of used the decision today to reiterate her positions, which would be to ban coercing a woman to have an abortion, ban sex-selective abortions, and also stop funding abortions abroad in terms of our international aid. And that is something that Gabriel has said he would also do in an interview with the anti-abortion group right now. It's also something the Harper government did, the Conservative Stephen Harper government did when it was in power. And so I think Minister Jolie is perhaps exaggerating, saying that abortion will be illegal in Canada, but there are things that can be done, and there are things that anti-abortion groups push for on the margins of the debate to get their points across and to get some movement in their direction. On sex-selective abortion, for example, that's something that anti-abortion groups often use because it's not black and white. Some pro-choice Canadians don't support sex-selective abortions, which is the idea of aborting female fetuses in favor of male fetuses, and it's something that
Dude, the latency, I've never played with better latency before.
Said that she was uncomfortable with when she voted in support of a conservative.
Like, this is basically land. How did we go from like 150 to like basically land?
When a fetus becomes a human
That
being.
was just
And so
me being dumb.
It's not necessarily black or white, this measure, that measure, and I think that's where the debate is susceptible of being a slippery slope, and I think that's where some conservatives are sort of pushing to see where they can move things to without completely overturning the situation as it is in Canada. And so I think it is a debate that is not closed. It's still very much open in those areas of the issue.
Kelly, I know even when it comes to just broadly the media reaction, I would say, to this particular story, you hear particularly conservative voices who feel this is a U.S. issue, what is happening with Roe v. Wade, and
I got
the decision to vote on it
destroyed.
here in Canada is essentially like playing into the Liberal hands. What do you think about the legitimacy of the extent to which this is a live political issue, be it in the Conservative race or beyond?
I think anything can be live political issue. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the United States who would have thought very recently that Roe v. Wade was a closed issue. So I think anything can be opened up. Having said that, I think, it would have been nice if the federal Liberals had waited a day to reflect on this really momentous, ground-shifting day in the United States for women in those states where they're talking
Junkertown.
about
Yo, I've never played
abortion
Junkertown in Overwatch 2.
I think there is
Just didn't
time to reflect
exist.
on that today before going into domestic.
I kind of want to play
politics.
Orisa. I feel like Orisa could be good.
It might sound naive, but it felt
Let's
unneeded.
be
I
honest.
think there's
Ball's
enough
just
going on. I
just
also
good.
think that the Liberals in issues
Wait,
like
I should play
rely
Junker
on
Queen
them
on
sometimes too
Junkertown
much
though.
when things aren't going their way, and we saw that in the Ontario provincial election. The
Look at
Liberals
that
were talking
dirty.
about
Look at that
gun
latency.
control, and it felt like a political ploy rather than a legitimate expression of something. And I think the Liberals always can run into that problem. Having said that, it is, I think anything can change.
Charge in there, boys. Ooh.
We're seeing that happen south of the border. It is a legitimate discussion to have. It's the biggest democracy in the world. What happens in the United States will reverberate with us in small and big ways. And we start that discussion kind of today.
And I think there's a comment from Leslyn Lewis today that I think to some extent picks up on what you're saying, Kelly, in terms of how we talk about this in this country. A statement that she put out, I'd like to read part of it. She says, Canadians deserve an adult conversation on life issues to address the well-founded concerns of both sides. My government will support life legislation that unifies Canadians. But that call for an adult conversation, Nigan, and as Marie said, Ms. Lewis has put out her position on this issue, which involves things like curtailing sex-selective abortions, stopping sex-selective abortions, coercive abortions, more pregnancy centers. Nigan, do you think that we do have an adult conversation around this issue, particularly in Canadian politics?
Well, what's really not an adult conversation is conflating all of those things into a conversation about abortion. Because the fact is that abortion most oftentimes are most impactful for individuals who are in low-income positions, people who don't have access to adequate health care, people who are in situations in which there are maybe crime or abuse. And so simply chalking it up to selective abortions or saying we just need to get some more pregnancy support centers just ignores the outright class issues that go within abortion. And, what we saw today is we saw a Supreme Court that has been politicized over a long period of time over two presidents, George Bush and Donald Trump. And this has been a long time coming. A manufactured issue, even that goes right up against the American public. I mean, today, 75% of Americans don't want changes to Roe versus Wade, but yet the Supreme Court sided with 25% of Americans. And so what that tells you is that when institutions get politicized, which is oftentimes what we see more and more increasingly with Canadian politics here in Canada, we see federal leadership candidates criticizing the Bank of Canada.
No.
At times, yes, the
Okay, maybe that's a bit much. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I kind of stuck in Junker Queen. I'm just gonna keep it a $1.50 with you. I'm kind of trash.
The public's interest. And so what Leslyn Lewis is talking about is conflating all of those issues together and having a black and white solution, which is really not a black and white problem. This is an issue in which which we have to deal with it on a whole bunch of different levels, most markedly around the issue of poverty, around the issue of women's rights, and then more importantly, like it is today on this very
we do a bit of spinning.
More than we hear from men. We really need to hear from women on this issue.
Sherelle, I do want to ask you about scrutiny of the Liberal government's record on this issue. You know, they made a pledge in the last election to ensure that there was equitable access across the country to abortion through the Canada Health Act. The Liberals, you know, are expressing great concern about what is happening in the United States. Are they living up to their own billing, their own pledges on this issue?
Well, I would go so far as to say that they're not. I mean, yes, they have said, and they've said repeatedly and very vehemently, like, we absolutely support a woman's right to choose. Abortion should be accessible and legal in this country and other countries. This is one of the first issues that you will hear the Liberals kind of latch onto when it comes to days like this or, you know, elections. They're always looking for, you know, okay, well, who voted for any sort of abortion bill?
Okay, I wasn't doing my job.
Let's go after that. But in all the time that, you know, the Liberals have been in government since 2015 and, you know, they've been making these promises, when you look at what's actually been done, there hasn't been a lot. There's been a lot of discussion and there's been a lot of statements. Even since May, when that draft, the decision was leaked, there was a lot of talk then, and there was also a lot of talk as well. We're looking into it. We want to, you know, carefully study this, and we want to react properly instead of, you know, being proactive and following through on some of these promises. The last thing I could find, since that, you know, May, I believe it was May 3rd when the draft was leaked, was a May 10th announcement of $3.5 million over a 3-year period.
Bro, nobody's gonna kill my team except me.
From the 2021 budget for
what is happening?
That's a small drop
hold on.
in terms of things that
I'm not doing this. Give me a second.
This was a $45 million pot. I believe only about $15 million of it
we're still alive.
allocated to about 9 projects since then. Yes, they were saying that they're having conversations, especially with provinces, because yes, this is a provincial jurisdiction issue when it comes to healthcare and when it comes to strengthening regulations and things like that. But there isn't a lot of actual action that's been done.
Thank you, members of the Power Panel. That is it for today. Make sure you follow the pod so you don't miss any of the latest political news. If you did enjoy this episode, please do share it with a friend. Thank you so much for listening.
That's all I talked about today? Oh.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.
But if you could share it with a friend.
Dude, why are those things not updated? It was like that in the last beta too. It's just like you can't tell. Oh my god, my team is just hard trolling.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.
Inflation around the world just shows you that's the first point. There's inflation everywhere. It's happening everywhere. There's another board that we have, if you don't mind, that we could pull up that shows actually what makes up the price of gas, just to give viewers an idea of how.
Not a big fan of this. Whoa. I have 30 Wekanak. I'm actually playing well. I just need to play it. I just need to play Reinhardt. Dude, it's because the latency. The latency's so good. Okay. No, okay, that's my bad. I threw for content. That's actually my bad. No way. Like it's actually so smooth. It doesn't look smooth on my end, like on your guys' end, but it looks good for me. Like really smooth. It actually feels like Overwatch. Last beta was like something was up. I don't know what it was. It just didn't feel. Yep, got him. Okay. Okay, so I threw, but I got him. Thank you, Ryan, for throw. No problem, man.
Score 0-3. Switching sides.
What's next?
Prepare to attack. Select your hero.
Anytime feels good. You know, it feels strong to help a teammate out. I mean, not our teammate. It feels strong to help an enemy out. You know. Was that bad awareness? Yes. Did my team still lose? Also, yes.
Attack commences in 30 seconds.
Reinhardt, do you think I should get a helmet?
Do you intend to be struck in the head?
Well, I hope not.
Then why bother? You'll just miss the wind blowing in your hair.
Danny?
Reinhardt hates bicycle laws. Based.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attack commencing. Escort the payload.
I should have set the other podcast. Oopsie. You die. I just brawl you. Okay, this character kind of out-brawls me, which I'm not a fan of. Okay, yep. Way to keep me up, boys. Okay, quick. Wait, where am I? Where am I? No, why does it always do that? It doesn't take me to the... Okay, take me to this one. No, play it.
This is a CBC podcast.
No.
Hi everyone, I'm Catherine Cullen, and this is the Power and Politics podcast for Monday, June 27th. On the pod today, NATO is beefing up its defenses in Europe, boosting the number of troops on high alert to 300,000. We have an exclusive Canadian interview with Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. Plus, hear over whose rights could be targeted next after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned legal abortion. We'll tell you about a new decision from the court that critics say further erodes the separation of church and state. And self-styled freedom protesters are set to return to Ottawa for Canada Day. Will police be ready? The Power panel weighs in. But first...
Oh, are you kidding me? Actually hits a good nade for once. I'm just dead.
Secretary General, welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've made this news today, well over 300,000 troops that are going to be in a state of high readiness. Tell me what you think that means for the war in Ukraine.
That means that we will be much more able to reinforce quickly if needed. This is one element of what we do to significantly strengthen our deterrence and defense with more forward defense, with more presence of NATO troops, especially in the Eastern Part Alliance, but also more pre-positioned equipment.
What did he say?
And high readiness of forces, so we can quickly deploy forces if and when needed.
You know that Canadians listening to this are going to wonder what the
Sorry about Ryan. Sorry, we do a bit of trolling. That Bastion's just a little upset.
Do you expect Canada to account for?
Well, there will be specific.
He just can't handle it.
Countries, including Canada. I'm not able to share with you the exact number for Canada now, but what I can say is that.
Okay, now I'm actually motivated. Hold on, I kind of want to like mute him and like.
Canada is leading one of the
not mute him. You know what I mean?
Battle groups that we deployed after the first invasion of Ukraine back in 2014.
Dude, this Bastion hates me.
I've been there visiting the Canadian troops together with Prime Minister Trudeau, and I'm always impressed by the courage, the commitment of the Ukrainian, of the Canadian troops when I meet them in Latvia and in all the NATO missions and operations. Then after the brutal invasion of Ukraine this year in February, Canada has further stepped up, both with troops but also with air and
dude, that has to be so mad.
Demonstrates the the importance
Thanks, man.
and the value of the Canadian
Thanks, man.
Participation and membership in NATO.
Well, I'm sure many Canadians would be happy to hear that praise, sir. I'd like to understand whether you expect Canada to account for any part of it. It's a significant increase. Do you expect Canada to account for any part of that 300,000, even if you can't get into this specifics?
Yes, absolutely. All allies are going to contribute to those high readiness forces, but I think we have to understand that what we do now is partly to increase our presence in the eastern part of the alliance. Canada is already part of that. Second, we have more pre-positioned equipment, fuels, weapons, supplies, pre-positioned, and again, not least in the eastern part of the alliance. But these high readiness forces, they will be
dude, this Bastion. I tilted the Bastion, dude. He switched to Pharah. Oh no, he switched to Pharah, and I'm starting to catch up to him on stat line. Oh no. He was tired of getting pinned.
Permanently stationed in their
Oh, I broke this guy's mental,
but
man.
with high readiness to be deployed on short notice.
Oh, come
you
on.
know well that the NATO allies in the Baltic have great anxiety about this. This is a big part of this meeting that you're going to have. The Estonian
Oh,
Prime
no,
Minister
he's mad.
has in fact referred to NATO's plan, saying when it comes to the potential for a Russian invasion, NATO's plan is to, quote, lose it all and then liberate afterwards. Do you think that this high readiness plan should alleviate those concerns? Should she no longer be worried?
NATO has been able to protect and defend all NATO territory for more than 70 years, and the purpose of strong deterrence and defense is
Okay, blame my
conflict.
man. I got walled off.
It
Got
is
walled
actually
off,
to
guys.
prevent the conflict and to be sure that that is also the case in the future in a more dangerous world where we see also more aggressive Russia. That's the reason why we have this combination of more forward deployed forces, more forward pre-positioned equipment, and higher readiness forces at home. And this combination sends a very...
Oh, I got slept. Dude,
Russia,
there's actually
Moscow,
no way.
that we are there to protect and defend every inch of Allied territory, and by doing that, we prevent an attack. That's the main purpose of NATO, to prevent attack, preserve peace.
Uh-oh.
I'm confident that they will be happy with the decisions that we're going to take at the Madrid summit, because it is a fundamental shift in our deterrence and defense with this combination of more forward presence,
Unlucky.
forward defense, but also high readiness and more pre-positioned equipment, backed by a significant...
We gotta...
naval and air,
It's time to
capabilities.
unlock.
So
Put this
together,
this team on the
sends a
back.
message
Look, we're
and
playing
provides,
full brawl.
deterrence and defense that
Reaper.
also the Baltic countries need.
Let's see if we can get a lucky pick
Let's
here.
shift to this question of military aid. We have all seen the reports, you know very well yourself. Ukraine does not seem to have the equipment it needs. Reports of running out of Soviet ammunition it requires, not having enough Western ammunition. Are you
Okay, maybe that's a bit like bit much. Oh.
I'm confident that coming out of this summit will be a very clear message about
bring.
and partners stepping up support for Ukraine. This is building on what we have already done. We have to remember that actually NATO allies, and in particular Canada, have provided support to Ukraine since 2014.
Isolate the queen, baby.
Camp called Yavoriv in the western part of the alliance.
Ukraine,
where I saw Canadian troops training Ukrainian troops. That was back in 2015. So over the years we have trained tens of thousands of Ukrainian troops, equipped them, and they are now making a huge difference on the battlefield every day. But they need more, and that's the reason why we are so committed to provide more support, both military equipment, weapons, ammunition, but also financial and humanitarian support.
I want to seize on that, though. You acknowledge the current situation as it stands leading into this Madrid summit is not sufficient.
No, when I say they need more, meaning that's what they have now is not sufficient, and especially not...
Oh no, dude, he's gonna be so mad. He's so mad.
Every day.
I can feel it. I can feel it in him. Scoob is just... So, yeah, he's... Oh no. Tank brain.
What we have already provided. And that's why we also need to be prepared for long haul.
Oh no.
No one can predict how long this war may last, but we need to be prepared for a long time. we are paying a price for the
19 and 12 brain.
For the sanctions we have imposed. But the price of not supporting Ukraine will be much higher than the price we pay today by
Not good.
You also said today, speaking of prices, that when it comes to that 2% commitment, increasingly it is the floor, not the ceiling. Canada is, of course, not on course to hit that 2%. What is your message to the Canadian government?
Of course, all allies to meet the 2% guideline. I welcome that Canada, since we agreed that guideline in 2014, has increased defense spending, and that also that Canada will now invest in even more new modern capabilities, including by modernizing the NORAD, the command to protect the North American airspace. That's important for whole alliance, and also investing in new fifth-generation aircrafts or aircraft. Aircrafts. Then the message is that, of course, burden sharing in NATO is partly about spending, but also about contributions to NATO missions and operations. And we have seen Canada really stepping up when it comes to contributions to NATO missions and operations, especially when it comes to their presence in the Baltic region and the lead that Canada has for the NATO back group in Latvia.
I do not hear you prodding Canada to spend more. Do you accept that Canada just isn't going to reach 2%?
No, I expect, as I said, all allies, including Canada, to invest more and to meet the 2% guideline. I welcome the increase we have seen, but there is a need to invest even more.
In closing, I want to ask you about comments.
It feels so good to do that.
Volodymyr Zelensky, he has reportedly told G7 leaders that this war should end before winter sets in. Is that realistic?
It's for the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian political leadership to decide what kind of conditions they are willing to accept. Most wars will end at the negotiating table. It has to be Ukrainians that decides what they can agree to in those negotiations. What we should do is to provide them with support, military support, because we know that there is a very close link between what they can achieve.
Oh, dude, I think Scoob might leave. I think we might force him to leave. I actually feel kind of bad.
So our military support is a way
like, I think
to
he might.
enable
I think he might quit.
To achieve
I think we might have bullied him too much, guys.
In the negotiated peace.
This
isn't good. This is not good, guys. He's playing Junkrat. Oh, he's.
I'm extremely careful about speculating about that. Of course, everyone wants this war to end as soon as possible. The best way of achieving that is by President Putin to just end attacking a peaceful, democratic neighbor, Ukraine, and respect the sovereignty of Ukraine. As long as he doesn't do that, then
it was worth its style. I'm not mad. I'm not mad.
That's the right enshrined in the UN Charter, and we have the right to help Ukraine defend themselves, and that's exactly what we do. Wars are unpredictable. I am careful predicting how and when this war will end, but we need to do what we can.
Well, I was just gonna say it was easy now the Rhino wasn't there.
End as soon as possible,
or something like that.
Terms which are
I mean, it doesn't matter.
For Ukraine.
I think we just win this.
Can we say that either side is winning this conflict right now, sir?
What we have seen is that President Putin totally underestimated the strength of the Ukrainian armed forces, the courage of the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian political leadership. He thought he was going to take Kiev within days. He had to withdraw from Kiev and also parts of the eastern of Ukraine, Kharkiv. But we are also at the same time seeing that Russians are making some advantages or making some progress in the eastern part of the alliance. And that's the reason why we need to step up our support and ensure that Ukrainian forces can retake territory and stop the Russian invasion.
But neither side is winning right now?
That sounds like copium.
Right now, they're not, neither side is winning, but it is a kind of unpredictable situation on the battlefield. We need to support Ukraine.
Okay, a little bit of. Please tell me that Scoob on the.
The U.S. Supreme Court has issued another decision that critics say blurs the separation of church and state. It has ruled in favor of a public high school football coach who lost his job for praying on the field after games. Jackson is within
well,
news.
That's a bit misleading.
Hey there, Bree. What can you tell us about this decision?
Okay, so our team is kind of lost.
Coach that claimed that the Pemberton School District in Washington State violated his religious freedom by telling him that he could not pray on the football
Should
field.
I play ball to trigger Scoob?
Conservative justices sided with Joseph Kennedy. The school district had argued at the time that they were just trying to avoid the appearance that the school was endorsing a religious point of view. But one of the key issues in this case is that when Coach Kennedy was going to the field to pray, he was doing so in a very public manner, doing it on the 50-yard line. So it was a very prominent place for him to do that. And some would say that that amounted to a moment of giving thanks or public demonstration of his religious faith. That's something that some of his players may have been compelled to follow and join in on. So that was the argument that we saw there. But in the majority, the Supreme Court justices, or at least in the majority opinion, Justice Neil Gorsuch held that Kennedy's expressions were protected by his freedoms under the First Amendment. But in the dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote that...
Oh, that's kind of big. Here. Come here. Oh, it's so big. Wait, I can actually win this now.
Obviously, all of this is coming just a few days after this historic overturning of Roe v. Wade. Given that, and with that in mind, how is this decision going over?
Well,
wait, Scooby, don't leave. Wait for it.
Where, after that Roe versus Wade decision,
no chance he stays.
That was a concerning decision for.
Oh no, Scoob got play. You know, good for him. He deserved it. He needs this.
This is something that
Scoob needed this play.
So to have another big ruling like this come out, where critics do say that it is a clear.
Scoob needed that. He needed that.
Like
he was in trouble otherwise.
Sonia Sotomayor said, because it does blur the line between church and state, and that was something that for decades people.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna cancel. I'm gonna take a break for a second.
So it continues to raise questions for people about whether the Supreme Court has gotten political.
Okay, NBC's Bree Jackson, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on this story. Well, we were just talking about it there. Friday's historic ruling against Roe v. Wade obviously continuing to have effects, notably in the state of Michigan, where it's causing not just concern but confusion. That is because back in May, Planned Parenthood obtained an injunction to stall the enforcement of Michigan's 1931 abortion ban. The group did that in case the top court overruled this landmark case. Ashley Fennessy is the Director of Communications for Planned Parenthood Michigan. She's here to tell us all about it. So, Ashley, despite this injunction, you have the governor saying today, for instance, that there is still confusion in Michigan when it comes to seeking abortions. What can you tell us about what this means for people who are seeking an abortion right now?
Yeah, we have seen a lot of confusion, especially among patients. When the Supreme Court decision came down Friday, we did get an influx of calls from patients calling our health centers, worried that they wouldn't be able to come to their appointments. We did assure them that abortion is still legal in Michigan. They could keep their appointments, and anyone who needed to make an appointment can do so. And then since then, we've been working to make sure everyone in Michigan knows that abortion is still legal. It should remain legal while Planned Parenthood of Michigan's case proceeds. And we are optimistic that ultimately our lawsuit will result in that 1931 ban being ruled unconstitutional under Michigan's state constitution and other civil rights laws.
Okay, I don't want to get too deep into the legal intricacies here, but can you give us just sort of the simple version of what your case is, which is separate, as I understand it, from this lawsuit, this case that the governor has brought forward. But what is Planned Parenthood's argument for why the state ought not to refer back to this 1931 ban?
Yes. Planned Parenthood of Michigan is arguing that the 1931 ban is unconstitutionally vague, and it is unconstitutional under Michigan's state constitution and state civil rights laws.
Okay, so you have this case. The governor is also seeking clarity from Michigan's top court on this question. You look at what just happened with Roe v. Wade in the Supreme Court in the United States. I heard you say a minute ago that you're optimistic I guess I wonder why you're optimistic in the face of what you've just seen.
Yeah, that's kind of mean.
We are optimistic about our lawsuits because the judge that granted our preliminary injunction did indicate that she thinks we have a strong argument in our lawsuit, and we are optimistic that it will eventually be struck down.
For everyone, though.
I would also say that our advocacy arm, Planned Parenthood Advocates of Michigan, is working to pass a ballot measure in the November election that would permanently protect abortion access and other reproductive freedoms in Michigan.
I certainly want to get into the November election in a minute because obviously there are pretty big political consequences, but I also just want to stay with this moment for a second. I imagine that you have to contemplate the prospect that the legal action by both yourself and the governor won't succeed. What would that look like? What would that mean for people in Michigan if you're not successful? Particularly given what's happening with trigger laws in other states right now.
Yes, that would be devastating. There are about 2.2 million Michiganders of reproductive age who could lose abortion access if a ban were to take effect. In that case, Planned Parenthood would be working hard to connect people with care in other states such as Illinois or New York and potentially Canada, but more likely states in the U.S.
Okay, I do want to get into the Canadian part of the discussion in a moment, but let's push through right now to the political discussion. Michigan is called sometimes a purple state, right? Attorney General, Governor, who are Democrats, but the House and the Senate controlled by Republicans. Tell me how much you think this particular discussion about abortion access is likely to figure into that November vote, because obviously there are a lot of other issues going on, a lot of people concerned about, for instance, cost of living, gun rights, all kinds of things like that. Where do you see this fitting into the political discussion?
It's a lot of bell spreads.
First, I want to say that it's devastating that this is coming to a political discussion. Really, these should be deeply personal healthcare decisions that people are making. But as far as the elections coming up, I will say that a clear majority of Michiganders support safe and legal abortion in Michigan and want it to remain that way. Even in 2018,
I can't take her seriously, just
Governor, Attorney General, and Secretary of State were elected, we know that their support for reproductive health and rights was a large reason why so many voters came out and enthusiastically supported them, and we hope that that will be the case again.
I do want to finish by asking you, coming back to what you were saying about Canada. I know that your group put out a statement where you say, quote, "At this time, traveling to Canada is not necessary." Do you feel that officials in Canada ought to be preparing, despite the optimism you've talked about in this interview, for the prospect of women traveling across the border in order to seek an abortion?
Yeah, this is really an all-hands-on-deck moment, so any efforts that leaders in Canada can take to be prepared are appreciated, especially because Michigan is nowhere near the only border state in the U.S. that might turn to Canada for care. So yes, we appreciate any efforts by Canadian leadership to ensure that not only their country, but also perhaps members of ours can access abortion.
Okay, this June China one kind of seems like roasting sleeper. It's about the...
It's difficult to make a blanket statement about women
seeking
abortion, but we know that a lot of them do not have a lot of options. They don't necessarily have financial means. We know that a lot of Americans don't, or a significant portion of Americans, I should say, don't even have a passport. So in terms of when Canadians
that was such a losing game, and then Scoob just he just woke me up. Like I was playing on autopilot, and then I see Scoob. He's talking to me. I'm switching to Reinhardt.
I can't give you projections on numbers.
Sorry about
I will say that you
were
right that the people who face the most barriers to abortion access are people with low incomes, people living in rural areas, people who
we don't need to talk
may
at the end
not
either,
have
you know?
a passport or
I don't need to talk smack. I'll let it slide, Scoob. It's okay. You got your play of the game.
Them over the border. So navigating those waters will be a difficult task for both providers here in the U.S. trying to connect patients and just patients in general looking for where that they can access care. I do want to say that anyone in any state looking for abortion access can visit abortionfinder.org and that will connect them with the nearest providers for them wherever they are.
Okay. Ashley Fennessy, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
The Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade is prompting demonstrations here in Canada.
Un enfant, c'est un choix. L'avortement, c'est un droit.
This was the scene today on Parliament Hill. Pro-choice advocates turned up to speak out against the U.S. top court's decision to end access to legalized abortion nationwide. Protests were held across the country over the weekend. NATO is boosting its rapid reaction force to 300,000 troops.
This combination sends a very clear message to Russia, to Moscow, that we are there to protect and defend every inch of Allied territory, and by doing that, we prevent an attack.
What should Canada's contribution be, and how is NATO doing in its contribution to that broader fight against Russia and the war in Ukraine? Let's bring in the power panel. Political strategist Sharon Carr is in Toronto, as is Amanda Galbraith, principal at Navigator in Regina, Sally Hauser, former Deputy Director of the NDP, now with the Canadian Strategy Group, and here with me in studio, Chris Hall, host, of course, of CBC Radio's The House. Chris, I want to start with you and just get your reaction to, in particular, that news by NATO that they are making such a major increase, almost eightfold in its rapid reaction force. How big a deal is it?
I think it's a huge deal. It's not only changing the smaller force of 40,000, but actually expanding its mandate, particularly in the eastern part of Europe, because clearly they believe Russia is a threat and has changed the whole balance of power in that part of the world. So I think that in itself is a real sign that NATO understands that this is going to be a long conflict and they need to be more present in a way that can respond quickly to any potential further incursions into NATO countries, such as the Baltic states. But to your point, the other thing that's important here is how much will Canada contribute to that? We're not at 2% yet in terms of our overall contribution of budget. That is an issue. I know Jens Stoltenberg made a point of saying to you that they are increasing it slowly. But how much equipment do we have to contribute to this? How many more troops can we put in? That's the question that we're going to have to see what kind of answer Justin Trudeau provides.
Yeah, very interesting. Sally, I want to ask you for your take on this, particularly when it comes to Canada's contribution to this rapid reaction force. We know that the idea is that the troops remain in their home country, so they're not stationed abroad, but that they are ready to go within a matter of days if called upon. Do you think that this is something, Sally, that we ought to see a significant contribution on the part of Canadians too?
Well, I mean, all of this is going to cost money. Obviously, this is a massive development as we move forward.
It's something that
there's been criticism of Canada in the past for not essentially pulling our weight in the alliance in terms of our contributions. So, I mean, coming up, there's going to be, this is really, it can't be overstated what a massive change this is.
Shut up.
And when you look at Stoltenberg's pre-summit kind of press comments, singled out China as well. So this is not just something to deal with the immediate, but something that is going to be years long and even decades long. And so Canada is very much going to have to think about where we play that role, both financially and contribution of troops.
Amanda, I want to bring you into that. I mean, maybe one thing to note for the audience's purposes is that Canada has had 3,400 troops on standby for quite some time now. They still haven't been called upon. So I think when we reflect on what this new effort is like, we wonder if Canada makes a bigger contribution, you know, at what point do we actually have to make the contribution? But I'd like you to just reflect on Canada's role in all of this, Amanda.
Yeah, I think, to my mind, I think it's a significant opportunity for Canada to look at this kind of new realigned world order, right? Russia's reinvigorated NATO in a way we haven't seen since the Cold War, frankly. And Canada has an opportunity to step up as a middle power and play a greater role in what this is going to look like. I mean, this is, to Sally's point, the inclusion of China as well as Russia, right? That's significant. So I think it's becoming on us to do that. That being said, we know under the current Liberal government, you know, lots of money has gone unspent on the military. You know, they were unable to fulfill, you know, significant arms. So there's a lot of issues there that would need to be dealt with. but I personally would like to see this, and my guess is it would be popular with Canadians, particularly as they're not be deployed, right? They would be at the ready here in our country.
Yeah, it's interesting to think, to your point, Amanda, that it's not so long ago that NATO was talking about its biggest enemy in some ways being apathy, right? The fact that people just weren't engaged. And of course, it's such a different time now. Sharon, I'd like you to weigh in on a question that Chris raised, which is this target that, of course, NATO has had for a long time, 2% of GDP to be spent on the military. We know from the last budget, it's really not something that the federal government particularly seems to have in mind. Yes, it is growing its military contribution. I believe it's aiming at 1.5%. But we're not really hearing a lot of talk about 2%. And I thought it was interesting in my interview with Jens Stoltenberg. On the one hand, he was saying, yes, we want everybody there. But I felt like I kind of had to needle him. I think the audience could hear in the questions to really say that Canada in particular ought to step up. He seemed to be much more comfortable praising Canada for what it's already doing. Where do you think the Canadian government, the Canadian public's appetite is when it comes to that 2%?
Definitely. While listening to his comments, he was definitely a lot lighter than some might have been in terms of asking or saying what our targets.
Is that on her end?
In this case, I would say
comfortable praising Canada for what it's already doing. Where do you think the Canadian
Sorry, I heard a phone vibrate.
Appetite is when it comes to that 2%?
Definitely. While listening to his comments, he was definitely.
It was. See, I heard it.
Have been in terms of asking
the phone vibration.
Saying what our targets should be. In this case, I would say there hasn't been an appetite, specifically with this government, for many years now to increase it to 2%. There's always been this deflection, but with what's happening in Ukraine and with the age of social media where you can see everything live, we just saw today there was a missile that hit a mall. There is more pressure, I would say,
that was kind of crazy.
Canada to actually meet that.
They really just bombed a mall. It was like 200 kilometers away from the front lines. Well, there had no reason to do it. They just did it.
I think seeing the number increase in terms of how many people we'll have on the ground adjacent to Ukraine is a really, really good step. But this is probably a really important moment for Canada and the Canadian government to reevaluate how they want to be seen on the world stage by how they contribute.
Chris, you want to pick up on that?
It's interesting because when Trudeau was first elected in 2015, he talked about Canada being back. He was referring to the United Nations at that point. And they did have a peacekeeping mission in Mali. They were there for a year, a little bit longer. And I think this is another one of those moments where being back means contributing more. And I think the realization that many people have now is that with NATO expanding its view beyond a North Atlantic treaty organization...
Wait, I just realized, what do you use to Pidgey do?
That's an indication that cybersecurity becomes an increasingly difficult thing for these countries
Can I start telling Pidgeys as well?
And they need more support in that front. We know that Russia is showing itself as being more belligerent than it has in the past. So, yeah, the Cold War may not be back, but there's clearly a dividing line drawn here, and Canada is going to have to step up.
Sally, you want to pick up on that?
Yeah,
they're always level 3 as well.
Chris mentioned the cybersecurity or cybercrime as one because
what
that was
about
quite clearly outlined, and it's going to be a big topic of discussion.
What about Caterpies?
Is recognizing that it isn't the Cold War. There is all sorts of different ways that NATO has to be engaged.
With HPV,
so
yeah, right. Good luck with that
the
one.
Increase in troops, which is huge, but looking
Metapod's
at
defense. Oh, okay, so
quite
just
explicit was increasing air capacity, increasing naval capacity. So it's recognizing where the new battles or lines are being drawn, and obviously you have the cold contribution talking about the 2%, but where are the ways
I'm just going to assume I'd be shocked if
NATO in our areas of expertise that really attacks this kind of new reality we're living in.
Okay, we are going to leave this discussion there, but we're not done with the power panel yet.
Fine. Not done with the power panel yet.
I encourage people to come and have a peaceful, joyous occasion in our nation's capital. And those people who are coming here to disrupt those wonderful celebrations will be dealt with the full force of the law.
We're prepared to take decisive and lawful action to deal with threats, occupation attempts, and other unlawful behavior that we observe.
Well, Ottawa is gearing up for celebrations and protests this week. Thousands of families are expected to flock to the city's downtown core to celebrate Canada Day, but protesters linked to this winter's Freedom Convoy are also expected to be in town. Will drawn-out protests become the new normal for the nation's capital? The Power Panel is with me to talk about that for one last round. Chris, Sally, Amanda, and Sharon. Chris, I'm going to start with you since you're here in Ottawa with me. What are your expectations coming into Canada Day?
Well, I expect there will be a lot of noise and that the police will be better prepared than they were for the takeover that happened back in February and January. In large part because of the criticism they received and because now there's a real understanding that we have some issues to address. One is who's responsible for the area in front of Parliament Hill. There's been split jurisdictions. That is going to have to be resolved, and there's efforts underway to do that. But secondly, this is going to be a rolling thing as we understand it. There are going to be protests planned regularly throughout the summer. And I think the police understand that they need to be able to take control of the situation, block off the downtown core, which they are already doing starting Wednesday, so people can't get cars downtown and can't take over in the same way they did. But look, some of the issues around vaccinations, around the upset with this Liberal government have not dissipated, and we can expect, I think, that we're going to be a focus for the next several months about what people want to see done and why they're still angry.
Yeah, well, and it's an interesting point, too, because, some of these vaccine mandates are no longer in place, but that doesn't seem to necessarily have dissipated some of the anger around it. Sharon, I want to bring you in and ask you for your take on how we should judge the significance of something like this going into it. I was at an event just in the parliamentary precinct earlier this week. Some Conservative MPs came to congratulate this veteran who had walked across the country to protest vaccine mandates. Some of the folks who were involved in this event were there, and they kept saying, listen, this is going to be a celebration. It is going to be peaceful. We heard the tone from Ottawa police there. They are certainly not convinced that everyone who is coming to town is going to be peaceful. Do you think we're looking at a serious dust-up here?
I don't think it's going to be anything like what it was in February with the Freedom Convoy, but I did find it fairly disturbing and actually unacceptable that so many Conservative MPs did go out and meet with some of the, not necessarily some of the folks who walked across Canada to protest mandates. Like, I appreciate everyone's right to believe in whatever they believe in, but they also met with the spokesperson of the Freedom Convoy. These are people who came to Ottawa to basically try to remove the Prime Minister from office. As uneducated as their idea around that was, they still decided to do that. So when you're meeting with folks like this, you're basically telling them that, as they said, you have allies in Ottawa. So I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that it is completely benign and not at all offensive as it was with the Freedom Convoy. But it's really hard to tell with this group. They feel invigorated and
God, I really hope that guys win.
Amanda, I want to bring you in here. I will be speaking to some Conservatives who had gone to that meeting this week. I mean, on the one hand, you had folks who were happily posing for pictures with the veteran in question, but as also other faces that people would know from the convoy, like names like Tom Marazzo. And then I had Conservative MPs who were telling me privately, like, I just came to meet the one veteran. I didn't know these other people were going to be here, suggesting, the media shouldn't be persecuting them, I guess, was the take for just having walked into a particular room. What do you think this event means for the politics within the Conservative Party right now, Amanda?
I think it's obviously complicated, right? We've seen, there's a leadership race active, and that means they're speaking to, I think, a very finite part of the population.
Who's in the Polyev camp?
Who is more sharper or more nuanced or more, less, I would say, appealing to the broad spectrum of Canadians. But at the end of the day, they have to turn around and run for re-election across Canada, not just with members of the Conservative Party. So you kind of see the party itself sort of trying to straddle that line, which is where, for example, as Sharon pointed out, a 20-year veteran of the Canadian Forces walking across Canada to protest vaccine mandates, it's frankly, you may not agree with the protest of that, but it's appropriate for MPs to meet with him. Some of the other individuals, some of whom are being, charged with offenses, not so much, right? So I think
I should say I don't believe anybody, to the best of my knowledge, no one who was in the Valor Building in the parliamentary precinct today had to face charges. Although some of them talked about, one in particular talked about having his bank accounts frozen. But anyway, go ahead, Amanda.
Fair enough. So I think it's a real tug of war for the heart of the party to a certain extent. Do I think the broad spectrum of Canadians are going to pay attention to that? No, I don't. But I do think it certainly colors the coverage and the treatment of the party and certain members of the party as this issue continues to be debated. I
don't even know where to level up.
So
I feel like this is just the only place to level up.
Sort of what this
good
protest means for different parts of the political makeup in Canada. Certainly what Amanda is talking about in the push-pull within the Conservative Party, but it also, I suppose, has the potential to
we have to do more tanks tonight, don't we? We really should.
Around, or does it? I guess, Sally, have the potential to fire up some of this debate, these battle lines from February, or do you think people are just had enough of that? Thank you very much. Ready to move on with my summer.
Yeah, I mean, I feel people, I mean, I'm not in Ottawa, but I do know of all my friends who had to deal with the occupation back in February of that. They're done with it. They're tired of it.
Plus 3
you know,
plus
and I will say
46,
that
34.
there are elements of the kind of the freedom convoy that does cross political spectrums. It's not kind of all right, left, and center. But what I am going to find interesting is of those kind of conservative members of parliament who have kind of more wrapped themselves up in this kind of protest movement. It might find it a little hard to be taking the selfies and the pictures on Canada Day. You know, when you're wrapping yourself up in nationalism one way or the other, I think people will be really disheartened to see, particularly being the first major Canada Day celebration in the kind of moving into the post-pandemic era. People are going to want to be there and having a really good time, and I don't think they're going to take particularly kindly to having that space.
Chris, just a closing thought from you, 30 seconds on what you'll be looking for, or this political moment right now.
Well, I think it's really an important one, because if they
All right.
don't manage to hold down the crowds, and if there are significant protests that clog Ottawa, there's going to be a lot more questions even than we had back in the winter. By and large, I think people feel like they've made the point that they came for, that the vaccine mandates are either reimposed, and that's certainly left out in the open by the Liberal government. So let's hope it goes smoothly, but I think we'll be watching to see just how big the crowds are and what the message is this time around.
Okay, thank you so much to the Power Panel for today. Sharon Carr, Amanda Galbraith, Sally Hauser, and Chris Hall. That's it for today. Make sure you follow the pods so you don't miss any of the latest.
Don't care. On to the next one. Right after this unimaginably quick break. By that I mean probably like an hour and a half. might be a while. Good luck. change of plan. This is it. We're done. We're done. We're done. We're calling it. We're calling it a night. That change of plan. Oopsie. Oopsie. Sorry, guys. Better save the game. You know, I already saved the game. Oopsie. Oopsie. Sorry. Don't care. Don't care. Don't care. Don't care. Suck my balls. Suck my balls. How are analytics doing? Oh my god. Strong. No viewers. Stream bitrate is currently 0. Nice, man. XQCL.